Hey, I'm Emily, and if you're new here, that's because this is my first YouTube video. I'm a collage artist, a writer slash blogger, a full-time traveler, a dog sitter, and a project tattoo artist. That is so many things. I think breaking down these identities and the work that I do and kind of introducing myself in my first video would help you gauge what kind of content I'm going to upload here without me actually having to tell you, because that would mean that I would have to know. If I had to guess, I would say my content would focus on my art and my creative process, things like vlogging, whatever I get up to when I'm pet sitting and house sitting, and maybe just travel lifestyle in general. I don't know. Don't hold me to any of those things. Anyway, let's break it down. The rumors are true. I am a collage artist. I would describe my style as an attempt to preserve and display the past and my present. I've been doing collage since 2021 when I started doing digital collage and mostly like surreal kinds of collage. I'm sure you've seen it before. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, to me, a lot of it looks the same. It's some sort of scene, a park, a swimming pool, and the sky is a galaxy and there's a giant planet or a giant moon. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with this. I love looking at surreal collage. I think it's so cool. I just don't resonate with making this kind of collage. I had to do some exploring to figure out what exactly my collage process was going to be. My process comes from my love of collecting trash. I love collecting receipts, pieces of paper left in a book, food wrappers, shiny things I find on the ground, things that you would just generally throw away. I had so many pieces and I moved out of my apartment and I couldn't bring them all with me because I'm traveling full time. So how could I possibly bring my shiny aerial fork with me? Like, that's so me. When she said, I love this fork, I get it. For me, it's like preserving a day in the life. I like to go to antique stores to thrift and look for old things. Old books, sheet music, cards, posters, matchbooks, old money, stamps, postcards, letters, you get the idea. I take these pieces of history and I put them together, make them into a little collage, and that's like my attempt at fine art. I have a few projects going on all at once right now. One of them, I'm working with stamps that I found in this old book that was at an antique store in the middle of like nowhere, Virginia. That's pretty cool. And I'm also working on a different project back in LA. It showcases like little pieces that I've collected, but also my writing. Wow. I've been experimenting with different names for myself, for this channel, for my artist name, whatever. If you know me, I used to be Melted Words. That was kind of like my tattooer identity, which is all well and good, but I don't really identify as like a full-time tattooer who like makes flash, does customs, blah, blah, blah. Like, we will get into that later, but I am a very different tattoo artist now. So I wanted to come up with a different name. The word mourning comes to mind, not like when you wake up, but like when you're sad. And I love this word because it just has such a heavy feeling to it. And it's so different from the word morning, like when you wake up, despite it being like sounding the same and just being spelled differently. But honestly, I kind of took this and went a little crazy because working with pieces of the past and like antiques and things that belonged to people, for example, I have a stack of postcards that people wrote to each other, you know, 50, 60, 100 years ago. I'm experimenting with referring to my work as celebrations of life. A little play on mourning, a little play on the history of it all. I think that's kind of what it is, a celebration of the people of the past and the things that they did that weren't extraordinary. The things that they just did every day. I like to make collages made of like the little junk that I collect too, and I think it has to do with my present day will look like the past to someone eventually. I recently started identifying as a writer despite writing on and off my whole life. If you write or you identify as a writer, you know how difficult it can be and how silly you can feel sometimes, but I've decided to lean into it. Sometimes my writing ends up being poetry or poetry adjacent, or maybe even prose, but I prefer to call it creative journaling. I would say my voice has become more consistent and recognizable to me, which are steps in the right direction. My blog is on my website, emilyinmorning.com. Let's go through some examples of what I post there. My latest post was a list/daily check-in. Before coming to Indiana, I was on the East Coast for a couple weeks and I was very homesick for the Southwest, so I decided to do a daily gratitude entry. Here are some examples of creative journaling. I wrote Mudslide when I was in Eureka, California, Jenny from the Block when I was in Reno, and 17-year-old Girl versus You when I was on a Greyhound bus from Minneapolis to Milwaukee. For me, the inspiration to write comes in waves. I'm more focused on my collage projects right now, so the blog has slowed down a bit the last couple of weeks. But if you can't tell, I'm all over the place with the things that I do, so I'm sure I'll get back to it when the next wave comes. In October of this year, 2024, I was living in LA and my apartment lease was ending. And I knew I did not want to live in that apartment anymore, but I didn't know where the heck else I wanted to live. I was thinking at different places, probably like in the valley, maybe even like Orange County or somewhere else completely, a different state. I didn't want to commit a whole year to a place that I just like had no idea. I would have just blindly picked a place, and moving is expensive and it totally sucks, and I did not want to do that. Since I started traveling full time, like almost 3 months ago now, I've visited 9 states. Can you believe that? I said I would give myself a year to travel full time and like not have an apartment or anything. And I'm only a few months in, but it's going well. But as I'm traveling around, I've learned what I want to have in the next place that I live. For example, I was in Baltimore and I was staying near Johns Hopkins, and it was so refreshing to live in a place that had like younger people around, people looking to educate themselves and be better and be a part of their communities. There were so many third spaces that I like stumbled into, and I was like, okay, the college town of it all. The college town of it all. Right now I'm in Indianapolis, and this is the longest I'll stay in one place like since starting this. I'll be here for 17 days. That's crazy. I think the longest I've stayed in one place was like 8 days. So this is very different, and I am enjoying it so far. 2 weeks to a month might be like the perfect amount of time because I like to unpack. Honestly, it's like kind of scary to leave the cities and the states and the area of the country that I call home. Those places are like California, Arizona, the Southwest. But I think it's true, even if I leave, like that still feels like home, which is not something that I thought was true, but I have learned that that's true, possibly in this moment. So if I die, bury me somewhere in the Southwest. Me being a pet sitter is a recent development. The reason I'm in Indiana is to do my first pet sit through the site Trusted House Sitters. This is not an ad or sponsored, but I've enjoyed my experience so far, so you have to listen to me tell you about it. Their website is really easy to use and nicely laid out. You have to make an account to be able to see what sits are out there, but it is a free account, so it could be worse. You have to buy the membership to be able to send applications and messages to pet owners, but honestly, I get it. It shows a higher level of commitment when you have to pay for the membership. They have 2 tiers that include different things. I got the basic tier to start, and it was around $150 a year. I signed up one night, and the next day I was interviewing for a sit. I think from getting the membership to interviewing to being confirmed, the entire process took maybe 48 hours. Here's my tip and trick for you. When looking for sits, I would encourage you to take a look at cities or states that are less popular. For example, basically every sit near Los Angeles and San Francisco have several applicants, but smaller towns outside the big cities have fewer applicants, and many have none. Of course, be honest with what you have experience with and are comfortable doing. All in all, I scroll this website like people scroll social media. I love seeing what's out there. I highly recommend this website to anyone who loves animals and traveling. I'll put my link in the description if you would like to sign up and use my referral link. That would be awesome. Again, this is not sponsored, but maybe one day it could be. Okay, what could I possibly mean by project tattoo artist? Let me just start by giving you an example. That might be easier. Last year in May of 2023, I started the Tattooed Poetry Project. So I took the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. I tattooed the entire poem one word at a time, one person at a time. So I had 108 words in the poem, and so I had 108 people a part of the project. Is that making sense? Here's a photo. Do you see what I mean? Do you get it? This idea was based on animated tattoos. If you haven't seen those before, it's when an artist will draw a handful of frames of a cartoon and then tattoo those one at a time, and then they'll collage, or I guess animate the photos together, and then it'll like create the animation. Now, I've only ever tattooed text. That is the only thing that I tattoo. I'll tattoo like quotes, lyrics, poems, handwriting from a birthday card, whatever it is, that's fine, that's great, but it has to be text. So I wanted to do my version, the text version of the animated tattoo idea, and this was where I got. This was the idea. I'm working on the second iteration of this project, and I decided to only do one stanza of an Emily Dickinson poem instead of the entire thing. And I did that because I had some ideas about it, and I just wanted to kind of get in there, do the work, implement these ideas, and then be done. I'm glad that I did because I have learned so many things from this, and I have more ideas for projects that are similar but different enough that I think people will think they're cool. I have the idea ready for my next project and I'm working out the plan. I promise to give this idea its own video, kind of explaining what it's about, what I think it means, how you can participate if you feel like participating. So I hope to see you in that project. If you have any questions about this segment specifically, please comment them and I'll be sure to address any questions you have in that video. My goal here is to just come back to being a person, to come back to being an artist. This is true of Instagram, but it's also just true in general that like you have to be a brand, and I am not a brand. I'm just a person. This is not my 2025 rebrand. This is just me transforming and changing and unbecoming and rebecoming who I am, as I've always done, as I always will do. So I look forward to learning more about myself, of course, learning about my art process, seeing what comes up, being in community with you. That's so sick. I'm very excited for that. I would encourage you to let go of any expectations for me or my art or this channel because I don't know anything. I only know what I know as it happens. So thanks for being here with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.